Welcome to Python with Andrew, where in today's video, we're going to look at one of the areas that people often get confused on when they're creating functions. And that's the area of, is it an argument? Is it a parameter? What's the difference between the two? Is it just a name? So I'm going to go through a few steps in terms of writing functions and which ones are called parameters and arguments and some of the issues associated with that. There's always a bit of confusion in that, but let's try and clean it up for a bit. Let's jump over to some code. So here we are with a blank slate. If I defined a function, sample, I'll call it sample function. And this sample function is just going to print out in the function. Nothing fancy, and I'm going to now call this function there. Okay, so this has no arguments, no parameters, no nothing, returns no values, the simplest of functions we can do. And if I run this, it does exactly what you'd expect. So that's fine. Then we say, okay, we want parameters and we want arguments. So first of all, a parameter is used in the definition of a function. So I'm going to call my parameter 1, all right? And then I'm going to use that in my sentence. And so I've defined the function. It's got one parameter. So straight away, the use of parameters is in the definition of a function. Now be careful at this point because some languages call this an argument, some call it a parameter. In Python, it's called a parameter. You will see people mix up those terms, but for all intents and purposes, you must need a variable to define in a function if you want to pass information into that function. That variable is called a parameter. In this case, parameter 1. And of course, if I run this, I didn't give it a value. I'm going to give it a value now. If I run this, we get the value of 10. So far, my definition is fine. And you can see here, I've already got a value there. So 10 is the argument. Okay, so I'll just comment that there. So we're passing an argument into the function. So parameters are in the definition of a function. Arguments are where we call the function. It gets a bit trickier from here, and we'll carry on. Now, this argument, in my case, I've just passed the value 10. But really what happens is whatever I am putting in the brackets there is going to be evaluated first, and then the value is going to be sent into our sample function. All right? And probably the easiest way to look at this, if I had a variable, and I'm going to call it argument 20, all right? And I'm going to pass argument into that. That makes it a bit clearer, and this time I'll get rid of my comment there because it doesn't make as much sense. So this time I'm assigning a variable called argument to 20, and then I'm calling the sample function. And hopefully if I run it, I get the answer in the function 20. All is good. So that makes it a bit clearer. I've got a variable argument, I'm passing it, and it's going to match up here to the parameter. Now be careful. Whenever I put the word argument in there, it's really an expression. It's going to be evaluated first before it's put into the sample function. So argument is evaluated and the answer is 20. And then 20 is passed in. And up here, we would say parameter equals 20. So, for example, if I made this a more complex expression, argument is times 10, right? And did that, you would expect the answer 200. So this expression here is evaluated first, and then it is passed into the sample function. All right. So arguments are used in the calling function, parameters are in the function, and whether there's 1, 2, or lots of them. So that's the simple case, the easiest way to remember it. So let me make it a bit, let me get rid of some here. Here's a few other little tricks that Python has. And I call them tricks because I don't know if I actually like them. So Python allows you to put a default value up here in your parameter. So I could say my default value is 15. And what that means is if I give it a value, it'll be that value. But if I don't give it a value, if I do not pass anything through, then it's going to default to 15. So in this particular case, I'll clear my screen there. I'm still expecting it to pass 20, and I do. But now if I took this argument off and said I'm not going to pass any argument in, then it'll put the default value of 15. Now, why I say be careful with this is because what I don't like about this in this particular case is that if we have a parameter and we've set up a function, then we should expect people to use that parameter, right? And that's good programming practice. That's not always the case, right? We could dream up examples where we might have a couple of values in there. So let's say up here, we might have a person's name, age, and date of birth, right? And we're going to print out their name, age, and date of birth, right? But sometimes we don't know their name, or we don't know their age, or we don't know their date of birth. So let's assume we don't know their date of birth, right? I could compute it with the age and so forth, but so I might just have Andrew and age. I'm gonna make myself 32. I'm not really, but let's try. And let's say we don't have a date of birth. We can have a default there equals unknown. All right. So that would be an example where we would use that sort of approach where we say, we always know the name, we always know the age, but sometimes we don't know the date of birth. We haven't got that information, so we don't know. We still want to print it out. So in this case, we want to print out the values, not very cleanly printed out. Andrew, who's 32, unknown date of birth. All right. So there are examples like that where generally you might say, I'm not sure if I'm going to get all the information and I want a default with that. So in that's an example where we have a parameter, but we really don't have an argument. We're not passing an argument through. And there are two cases that I wanted to discuss here. The first one where we just have a parameter up here. That's all easy and good. And then we call it with an argument. Now remember, that argument is evaluated before it's passed into the function. And we've got that special case where you can have a parameter with no value or not passed in, and we're going to have a default there. Now, Python does have a few other tricks of the trade with functions where you can have not just one, but many different number of parameters, right? And we can pass a number of different arguments. And probably the best example that we've probably all used is print. The print function that someone wrote, and it's in a module, we don't care what it is, but that allows us to put one argument, 2, 3, 4 arguments in this case, but it sometimes could be 1 or 2. So Python allows that. I'm not going to go into that. That's for another day. But there are some other tricks of function writing. But in this video, what's important is to get very, very clear. Parameters are used in the definition of a function. Arguments are evaluated and passed to the function. Their value is passed to their function. So hopefully that clears it up. Try experiment, try a few examples just to get it clear in your head, and then you'll find that you'll use it, and you'll use that terminology more and more and more, right? Parameters in the definition, arguments in the call. Sounds pretty clear. Sometimes people misuse it, so be flexible, but remember that's the basic definition. Thanks again. I hope you enjoyed this video and it cleared up a few issues. If you did, please subscribe. I'd appreciate that. Or share this with someone that you know might need some help. Again, thanks a lot and have a great day.